Hello and welcome to another episode of Lay It on the Table, the I always blow that. But we're going to keep going with it. The Southern Board Game Podcast with the accent on Southern. It is a tongue twister, but we're going to get it mastered. But one of these episodes. Hi, I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mahaffey. And of course, as always, my trusty partner in crime,
James Engelhardt, good to be here. Hope everything's going well for you, Joe.
It is, well, obviously, other than the tongue twisting in the morning, it's going great. Well, today, folks, we have a real treat for you. We have been able to coerce Richard Fortuna, also known in the gaming community as Tuna, to be our guest today. And I got to tell this story because one day Richard was in the game store, and I don't know if it was one of those I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today, but I ended up buying Tuna a beer, and I said, the only thing I ask in return is you got to come on my podcast. And he thought I was kidding. So, Tuna, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
So I got to say, it's not just normal that we would just go randomly extort somebody with a beer from the game store to come on our podcast. Tuna actually is involved in the gaming community here in the Carolinas. In fact, he is going to be, you know what? I don't want to say it wrong, Tuna. So why don't you tell us kind of what is your involvement with the upcoming JeffCon, and maybe even explain what that's about, but then tell us what happens next.
All right. So just a brief history.
That'd be great.
Most local folks are familiar with MACE, the Mid-Atlantic Convention Expo, which is a horrible name for that says nothing about what the convention actually is. But it's been going for 25 years as one of the premier gaming conventions in North Carolina. Jeff Smith, the man who was the brain, whose MACE was his brainchild, unfortunately passed away earlier this year. His partner in crime, Ron McClung, decided to have one last bash in memory of Jeff, and that's what JeffCon is all about.
That's awesome.
I've been going to MACE for over 15 years. So I've still got my personalized 10th anniversary MACE die, it's our involvement, my group's involvement is mainly we're going to be helping Jeff out to keep it up and running. We're going to be doing registration and just helping in general. With the background stuff.
And just for the sake of our listeners, would you mind just kind of telling the dates and the location for JeffCon?
Yes. If my internal calendar was not fundamentally broken, it's going to be Veterans Day weekend. So it's the second weekend in November. I really do have a broken internal calendar here.
It's okay. It's November 11th through the 13th. Sorry, I put you on the spot, and that wasn't fair. Yeah, it's the interviewer's prerogative. It's all good. No worries.
I always just look to. There are two things that are ubiquitous with MACE in the fall, and one is Veterans Day, and the other one is the time change, because we always end up hitting time change weekend, and it's like really. It's worse in the spring, though, because we always do time change weekend in the spring as well. So,
well, you just consider Friday and Saturday the original variant, and then Sunday is the expansion.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
And it's going to be at the Hilton Charlotte University place up there off of Harris Boulevard. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I sidetracked you with that. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're fine. So JeffCon is going to be the final MACE event, and it's colloquially being referred to as the final MACE. But then my team, which is Games for All Events, we are taking over from that point, and we are carrying it forward. And the name of the con will be Mythicon in 2023. Okay. So we're going to be keeping the same weekends in the spring and the fall. Same locations, hopefully, and just trying to pick up the torch and run with it.
Nice. Nice. And I understand you're going to actually be exhibiting at this year's or not exhibiting. You're going to be doing some classes or something. Is that
Right.
correct?
My wife and I are more hobbyists than gamers, honestly. Yeah, if you can see behind me, this is my Warhammer Wall of Shame, and so we love painting minis and crafting and doing that sort of thing. So Karen, my wife, she is going to be running the crafting area and doing managing a crafting competition or it's a gaming crafting competition. And then I'm going to be teaching a speed painting class for people who, are not comfortable with painting, but want to get their own personal wall of shame painted.
Yeah, we all have our wall of shame. We all talk about that. For me, it's all the board games that I have that are still in the shrink wrap.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of those too,
Oh, yeah.
or a lot of games that I've played once and then put on the shelf and then never touched again.
So I'm very impressed that not only are you're here for the end, obviously, and James and I've talked about this for a long time because, James has, just for your edification, Tuna, has been involved in gaming for many, many years. I was a long hiatus away from something like Dungeons and Dragons and came back to it in around 2018. And so a lot of our conversation really gets into our different points of view, because I'll be excited about a new game and James will be like, yeah, that reminds me of a game that came out a decade ago that's just sort of been reskinned and is doing it this way. So and so when we started this, we kind of unveiled all that through what we called our origin story. And I'm curious, you talk about a hobbyist, you talk about your wall of shame. How did you get into the hobby and what inspired you at that point? And then I'll dig into a little deeper as to how you got into games for all events.
Oh, sure. For that, we got to set the Wayback Machine to the early '90s. And
I was there. It's fine.
Yeah, at about age 14, I was introduced to Magic the Gathering. That was
yes.
my first exposure.
The gateway drug. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It truly was, and I really wish I still had my cards.
Oh yeah.
I would be so rich right now. Because I came in, right after Unlimited, right when Revised was getting started. So I had a bunch of Unlimited cards and, antiquities and oh gosh, I should never have sold. I mean, I did get more out of it than I put into it, but because
That's
I was, but it was not what I could have gotten.
Yeah,
but at any rate,
crazy money.
So that was the gateway drug, and then that got me, into the gaming circles, and then I started hanging out at Paradise Games, which is long since gone, that's where I got introduced to all of the cool board games and Warhammer and that sort of stuff. So I've been in it for a very long time.
And that would have been like late '90s at that point then, if we're talking about board games, or early 2000.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So the post Catan era, we can think of as
yeah, definitely. And then long about 2005, the gaming scene in Winston-Salem completely collapsed. Every game store closed.
Wow.
And so I had a pretty I was already running, campaigns and stuff for Warhammer 40K, and I actually started a website, a community website, cybertuna.net, that ran until 2011 to try to keep the Triad gaming scene together until the economy recovered, basically. So yeah, that was kind of my introduction into being part of the gaming community. Or trying to be an organizer.
It's interesting that the economy blew up there in 2005. Did it recover before 2009, or did it take some time after the big collapse?
It took a little time. As a matter of fact, I moved down here in 2007.
Okay.
I moved down to Charlotte, so I didn't really stay connected to Winston very much after that. But Yeah, I'm not sure if they have a lot of game stores up there. I know right now Charlotte seems to be in a renaissance. We have game stores popping up all over the place, which is great. Well, yeah, I hope that continues.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see the camaraderie around the
Mhm.
game stores. I was talking to we talk about Rob as our friendly local game store owner that has no sponsorship whatsoever involved in this production, but we talk about him all the time. And I was in there the other day, and Rob's distributor failed to give him some items that he needed, and there's evidently a Facebook group amongst the local provider or the local stores, and one of the stores said, "Hey, I've got some extras, come up and get them, we'll do the little swap out the way we would at cost or whatever." And that he was able to help him take care of it, balance out his stock. I'll just treat it like that. And I thought, wow,
Yeah,
that's just really great, because they don't really infringe on each other's territories, so to speak. And I hate to call them territories because it makes them sound like jets and sharks, but the reality of it is, it's wonderful to see the cooperation that goes on in that particular space.
right, right. And there seems to be no animosity if people are frequenting multiple game stores.
Mm-hmm.
To because everybody, at least all of the game store owners that I've encountered, they seem to be more interested in keeping the entire community alive.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because it seems like the game stores and the gaming community are a fragile thing. And when the economy takes a downturn, it's the other thing. It's the things that aren't food and
Yep.
shelter that seem to take a nosedive first. And unfortunately, game stores get hit hard in hard economic times. So and we're looking potentially at that again. So keeping people gaming and keeping people together, it's a positive thing for our community and for our families and for and for everybody. So we want to we definitely want to keep that going.
Oh yeah. So it sounds like 2007 was about the time you moved to Charlotte, right? And
Right.
that was about the time you started being part of Mace as well.
Actually, I'd already been
Okay.
part of Mace prior to that. I think I've been going for about 18 years, I think, because at that point, Mace was in High Point at the Radisson, and when I first got involved with it, and then it came down to Charlotte. I can't remember which year, but it came down to Charlotte not long after I moved down here. I considered that, prophetic, maybe. I don't know. It's like, they followed me down here,
Yeah.
But and it's been down here since. Yeah, that's
Okay. And your role, it sounds like, with Mace. So how long has Mace been around, and how has your role with them shifted over the
well.
years?
I haven't actually been like a part of the con committee or anything. I've been a GM. I've volunteered with them, and really, it's only this last Mace JeffCon that we're really getting involved with the actual running of the convention. And it's mainly just so we can learn, so we can start doing it next year. We have a Games for All events is a 5-person team. It's myself, my wife, a friend of mine, Nick Polimas, and his wife Rachel, and then Dan Smith, who is out in Raleigh area. So we have just the core team, and then but none of us have run a game convention before, but we have been to many, and we have volunteered at many.
Mm-hmm.
So we know a lot of, and we also have friends who have run game conventions. We have a nice solid base of brain trust
Nice.
that we can bank on. But we're hoping to really just take Jeff's example and make just a straightforward, well organized, family friendly con to get people out and gaming.
That's exciting. And so, we talked just a moment ago about all the local game stores and the friendly camaraderie. What kind of support do they bring to these types of cons currently, and what you hope them to bring in the future?
Well, you can always go to to a local convention and see local game stores showing up to as vendors. A lot of the promotion of local cons tends to be word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And so the game stores are absolutely vital for getting that information out. So we're definitely going to be working with local game stores to make sure that information about our con gets out there, because with this being the last maze, I don't want people to think that this is the end of gaming conventions in North Carolina.
Right.
This is because it's really just a transitional phase.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think the more that people understand that in the community, the better, the more they'll be looking forward to next year as well, to see what kind of is different. Because I think, you know, we James and I talk a lot about how the gaming landscape has changed. You know, you talk about it being a renaissance for Charlotte. I think it's even been a renaissance in gaming. I meet more and more people that are finding some aspect of the hobby, whether it's Magic, whether it's Warhammer,
right,
whether it's just the straight board game, or they've seen some kittens explode. I don't know, but it's one of those things where
see D&D on Stranger Things. Right?
There you go, D&D on Stranger
exactly.
Things. That has been one of the one of the big catalysts of it all. But yeah, and I think that even in the pandemic, I know that we probably, I always tell people, my wife and I, we board gamed our way through the pandemic. Just because it was, you know, whether we were doing D&D online or we have a gaming table here in our room, looks like Rob's back office. We have here to play games in, so it's one of those things. And speaking of spouse, because I met yours yesterday for the first time, and I'm curious, how is it that you got so lucky that your spouse is actually letting you do this con?
That was a lightning bolt from heaven, let me tell you. When I moved down here, I was living with Nick Polimas, who's now my partner with Games for All Events, and we actually met through Maze. Because there was a kind of a spin-off con that Jeff used to run. It was Mini Maze, where he would rent a room in a Golden Corral for the day. You'd pay a flat fee and you get to eat all day and game. It was amazing. But you know, he and I met through that. So when I moved down here, I moved in with him. And you know, she actually had moved from Texas, and the two of them were part of a you know, like a board game group. So we met up and, you know, hit it off, and, you know, the rest is history. And everybody since then has been like, you are one lucky. Because on top of it, she's an award-winning miniature painter, and
wow.
you know, she's amazing. She's
I was blown away.
I'm very lucky.
I was blown away yesterday watching her set up her station and get to work with the other two ladies that were doing the mini painting yesterday, and it was clear. And so I hate that I was not able to join them yesterday, but I'm hoping to do that in the near future, just to kind of learn, because I am.
And by the way, those minis that she was painting yesterday, those are for the painting competition, or the crafting competition at JeffCon.
Okay.
So the way that works is that you're given access to raw materials, and you're handed a blank box, and it's going to be a pre-painted mini by her, and they're all looking amazing. So these are like really well painted minis, and you use that as the theme to build a diorama.
Oh wow!
Wow.
So you build the diorama around the miniature that you've received. So using that as your inspiration. So and that is she's been involved working with that for a few years now. I think Jeff started it. He was painting the minis himself, and then and this year she's going to be painting the minis. But that's a fun competition.
Oh, that sounds
awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. This is one of the problems that James and I keep talking over each other. I'm gonna pause and let James ask a few questions or have a few comments.
Well, I mean, so I'm from the Asheville area, and I see that that's Asheville and Charlotte. And
Yes.
has it always been like Asheville and Charlotte, or is this a new
No.
thing? Okay, yeah, I figured not, but
Because it started out in High Point,
right.
and then eventually they wanted to, or Jeff wanted to start a second convention, and I want to say that one started in Hickory, I
Okay.
believe, and we were in it. I can't remember. I it's been a while, but the hotel that we were going to got torn down, so we had to find a different place, or they had to find a different place, and he ultimately landed at the Doubletree Hilton by Biltmore Place,
Oh wow.
and that is a great hotel. It's awesome, and they've been really courteous with Jeff and now with us, because we're already signed on for it's March 10th through 12th.
Yep.
I think it's going to be next year for the first Mythicon. So, but yeah, they've been excellent. And so at that point, it's Asheville, Charlotte. They did try to do one in Wilmington. That didn't work out very well.
Okay.
Because because they were going to do a Mace East, Mace West, and then Mace, and
Nice.
that one didn't pan out. Yeah, Jeff kind of lost his shirt on that one,
Oh no.
but it was cool.
So so it's been a couple of years in Asheville then, or just
It's been
decades, or
I can't even tell you.
okay.
I've been there pretty much every time, or every year. I
Yeah.
think there was like maybe one or two that I've missed, but I can't tell you the year. Yeah, I don't know.
So
But it's been a few.
when you talk about Mace as being
Yeah.
Mid-Atlantic, and obviously you're changing it to Mythicon, what is the draw? I mean, is it mostly people from the Carolinas, or do you find people from Virginia and West Virginia,
Oh gosh,
Ohio? What's the
we've got people coming from Alabama. We got people coming from all over the place, all up and down the Eastern Seaboard and the Gulf. I'm trying to, and we've also had some celebrities that have, so internet celebrities that have come in. Like this year, we're going to have Wylock from Wylock's Armory, and we have DM Scotty, DM's Craft. He's coming back. So we've had, and we brought in Danny, the 3D printing GM, one year. So we've got that's on the crafting side. Also. But yeah, it actually wasn't until this last Mace West where we were all kind of sitting in a room and reminiscing about Jeff, and there were people who had come all the way from Alabama to come up for this con because this is their down home con. Yeah, and that was one of the things that Jeff created. Oh, we have had people from California. Karen reminded me. Yeah, so we have people flying from all over the country to come to this one. But it's the thing that's made Mace special, and what has kept it going for so long is that when you're there, it feels like coming home. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's friendly. It's one of the most approachable cons that I've ever been to. So yeah, it's and hopefully we're going to carry that forward.
Sure.
So from a format perspective, I noticed that there's like standard slot schedules. I'm looking at the website right now. How does that typically work, and how do you decide what games are being run, how many games are being run, etc.?
That would be a question for Ron McClung, because he's always run the gaming for Maze. However, generally speaking, he does a GM's call every year to all the people who have GM'd with him in the past. He puts out an open call for gaming suggestions. People send in what games they want to run, and then he puts them on the schedule.
Nice.
There have been some special considerations, like for the Pathfinder Society and the I forget what the one for D&D is, but they even have like their own block, where they have their own room, where they can do their own thing. And then for the Savage Worlds people like me, we used to have Savage Saturday Night, which was like we would take over a room and run Savage Worlds, which was always fun. So you'll have little pockets of stuff like that, but yeah, it's basically it's a community supported convention. So the GMs are volunteers. They're getting paid by getting a free ticket, and and that's pretty much the way it's always been run.
That's interesting because James, I'm sitting here thinking ahead. So James is one of his many roles is he is a professor at a university in South Carolina called Furman, and he teaches a creative writing class where James, will you explain it because I'll probably say it wrong.
Yeah. So it's a first year writing class, and what we do is it's teaching first year students how to write that essay for school kind of thing, and getting them out of high school mode and into sort of a college and early scholarship kind of mode. And at Furman, they've got a nice way of doing this where the professors can pick, the instructors can pick whatever topic they want, right? So we've got, popular ones include ones about sex, and then there's one about the 60s and this kind of stuff. And so mine is tabletop games. So it's Game On is the name of the class, tabletop games and contemporary culture. So got a bunch of students each semester, and there's some of them who are kind of into gaming. I had one D&D guy last year, and this year I've got a Warhammer dude. But mostly they're not. They're kind of just everybody plays games. And this is kind of one of my sort of guiding principles is that people play games. We've been playing games as human beings since we've been human. So, let's explore that and use that as a way into the writing.
Oh yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm also interested in so part of this, I don't know if this is where Joe was going or not, but I'm interested in the sort of storytelling aspect of GMing. So I'm guessing these are all going to be like one shots, and are these people who are signing up for these, are they like new to gaming and are saying like, hey, I haven't had a chance to play an RPG, I don't know how to even get into it or approach it? Or are these people who are like, oh, I want to do this particular one shot, or I'm interested in that particular DM, or how does
Yeah, so well, first off, just for clarification, there's a lot more going on than just RPGs at Mace and at Mythicon, because we celebrate all types of tabletop gaming. So we do have RPGs, we do have board games, and even miniatures. There's a fairly solid BattleTech contingent that shows up every year, and I've run a few miniature games, and we've had people featuring even indie games like one-page rules. So and that was another thing back when I first got started in Mace. There were game companies, like small indie game companies, and this is in the days before drive-through RPG and just in time or like ad hoc or print on demand. So we had people coming out and testing their games and showing and doing demos of games that they've just created. So as far as the folks who actually come out, it could be people who've just been coming for 15 years like myself, or it could be people who are coming out for the first time. We've even run into people who aren't gamers, but they hear about the convention, and maybe they play video games, and they're like, what is this all about? And so they come out for a Saturday, and they sit in on a few games and figure out if it's something for them. And that's one of the beautiful things about conventions, is that it gives you kind of an opportunity to come and sample a lot of different things being run by people who actually know how to play the game. And it's a very fun and approachable way of getting into gaming. So yeah, there's all sorts of people who show up.
That's awesome.
And James, just for your benefit, where I was going with it is like, he's doing this in March in Asheville. That would be a good field trip for your curriculum. And then
I was going to say
he does it in the fall in
students up there.
Charlotte.
Yeah,
Go on up,
absolutely.
kids.
Yeah,
It's an hour away, hour and change. So
Yeah.
it's not bad. Yeah.
the room block is open now, so you can go ahead and book the hotel.
Well, and I would guess that most of them wouldn't want to spend, the whole day and night there, but it'd be a great way for just to say, hey, go up, see what all of this is about, and see a room full of people who are stoked.
If nothing else, Biltmore is right next door.
Oh, yeah.
So you go ahead and you book like the full 9th through the 13th on the con rate, and then you go to Biltmore when the con's over.
There you go.
And also Burial is right next door, the brewery. So
see, and I think my undergrads would probably be more interested in
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, but because from us, I love the idea that he's using this as part of the curriculum, and how many students come to the table, with biases against gaming, but also some people come with biases towards gaming, and then I've heard James tell a couple of stories, and I don't want to steal them all, but of people that have sort of been converted through the course. That wow, this is something that they can carry with them, and that's just kind of the wonderful thing about gaming from my perspective.
Oh yeah, and it's funny is that they think about games as like this little thing that you do to kill time when you're waiting for Thanksgiving dinner to happen, and then they get into this whole like, oh my God, there's a history of games that go back thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
There's this whole like intellectual history along with it. There's this and it's just so much fun to watch them think, oh my God, there's so much more. So that's just been a great thing to watch happen.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were at the Karen and I were at the game store, and I was working on building some minis. She's painting, and at the table next door or next to us, we were there were a couple of Magic players talking about the history of where the baker's dozen came from.
Oh,
like
wow.
The origin of the term. Right. And Karen's like, she just turns to me and it's like, being at the game store, being in a gaming environment, you hear like, so it's not like you get sports people together, they're talking about sports.
Right.
You get gaming people, you don't know where the conversation's going to go because we tend to be polymaths. Mm-hmm. and pseudo intellectuals, and it attracts a different type of person, but by the same token, there's such a stigma, I think, commonly to gaming, and people look at me and my Warhammer stuff, and it's like, you're a grown man and you're playing with army men, and I was like, yes, I am, and I am a better man for it.
See, I have a better I have a better intro when I get to go up to people and say, hi, I'm a dungeon master.
There you go.
No, but you're right.
I have to say, I play with toy soldiers.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Well, it is funny because we've all had that experience. I think I told the story earlier in our broadcast episodes. Rather, one of the first times I brought D&D to a church youth group, and we all grew up in the Satanic Panic. And I did the Stranger Things one shot for these kids, and they go into this part of the cave, and there's silver on the altar, and one kid goes, "I'm going to take the silver," and the other one goes, "Wait. You can't do that. This is their church. That's an offering." And I looked at the youth director and I said, see?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was just it was fun to watch them kind of work that out amongst themselves.
Gaming teaches us so many things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it's ethics in your case, or it could be critical thinking in the case of also D&D, but Warhammer, strategic thinking. It expands our minds in so many different ways. It's a great hobby. I encourage everyone to engage in it.
I think about Warhammer. My student was writing this paper about the Warhammer rule set and how incredibly convoluted and sort of dense it is, and how much. Yeah. and just like the being very careful about who can do what, and thinking, about what does this phrase mean? Was that just this very close reading of text, and really close, like arguing over what words mean? I'm like, my work here is done. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's legalese.
Yeah.
Especially if you get engaged in a competitive environment,
Yeah.
because then the legal framework of the rules becomes very, very important, because it can win you or lose you a game, the way one sentence is worded. And if you learn how to find the grammar mistake that gives you an exploit that wins you the game, at least until it gets fact.
Yes.
So, well, that's awesome. I think that the more that that these things get talked about, and the more that there are opportunities for people to experience it. On the one hand, I'm always begrudged every time I walk into a well-known national department store or a well-known national bookstore, and I see all the games there, and I think, oh, they're taking opportunities away from the friendly local game stores. But at the same time, they're really opening up the hobby and attracting people, and it's almost like a gateway that ultimately those people find it to the friendly local game store. So I'm generally, even keel about that these days. But I'm really excited that you and your compatriots have sort of followed that same organic path that I've heard so many times when you heard the story of Gary Gygax and how Gen Con got started, and how it's just, there were these guys that were playing miniature games, and they were writing letters back and forth to move the game forward and stuff. And just if you've ever had an opportunity to read one of his bios, it's really interesting to see, the organic nature of how that got started and how huge that is today. But then hearing how you got involved, and how the purveyors of this event have kind of come to a conclusion, but you guys have said, hey, we're passionate enough about this. We want to keep the community alive. We're going to keep this going forward. We're going to change some things. We're going to put our own flavor on it. But as the gaming industry continues to change, I think that that's important, just for that ongoing organic nature of the hobby, if that makes any kind of sense.
And to expand on that, I mean, you look at the larger game manufacturers now, and they seem to be and thanks to COVID, in part, sure, they seem to be trending toward the digital space, which pulls us further apart, physically. You're not interacting with people; you're interacting through a screen, not face to face. And tabletop gaming is, at its core, a social thing. It's a social hobby. So you have to sit down across the table and interact with people. And that's one of the things that we're kind of excited about with JeffCon and Mythicon, is that with COVID restrictions being lifted, and and things starting to return to a semblance of normalcy, people just want to see each other again. We want to engage with human beings again, and that's what the game convention is all about. It's getting out of your house and going and sitting down with a table full of strangers, and by the end you have a table full of friends.
Awesome. So information on JeffCon 2022 can be found at justusproductions.com. How do people find out about Mythicon starting in March?
Mythicon is at Games for All Events. That's Games FOR All Events, .com. And after JeffCon, the Just Us Productions page is actually going to route to us.
Perfect.
And then we're also taking over the JeffCon Facebook group, and that's going to become our Facebook group. So if you're already on the JeffCon group, that's fine. You can just stay there, and you'll get all the information for Mythicon as well.
Awesome. I'm looking at it right here. So Mythicon, March 10th through March 12th in Asheville. And then next year, when Veterans Day and the time change happens, here in Charlotte. And then, of course, JeffCon is going to be November 11th through the 13th at the Charlotte Hilton at University, up off Harris Boulevard. So that's great. So, well, this has been really interesting for me. Now, James and I have a segment every time we get together where we talk about what's on our table and what we're playing right now. And as we kind of go through that, I'd love to know what's on your table, Tuna.
Well, you might see a few orange boxes behind me here.
Yeah.
I am really into 40K Kill Team, the new version that came out in 2021. I've pretty much bought everything for it, because it fills a niche that the full scale 40K doesn't, and that's my desire to have a little bit of everything. And so I have 15 painted kill teams with another 8 on the docket, waiting to be painted. So I love collecting and painting miniatures of all sorts of styles, and Kill Team really gives me that opportunity. And the game's good too. So,
So,
So how many
secondarily, the
figures
game is
are in
also
each?
good.
How many figures are in each team? So give us just for a
Uh,
sense of the scale of what we're
that one,
talking about.
it scales. So if you've got Adeptus Custodes, you've got 4 models.
Okay.
If you have the new Gellerpox infected, you can have 15.
Wow.
So it really depends. But typically speaking, you don't see teams with more than 14.
Okay.
Gellerpox were kind of an anomaly to that. But generally, you're dealing with 6 to 8 for something with power armor that's tougher and stronger. But for your regular human style team, it's going to be 10 to 14 models. So it's very approachable for people who are new to hobbying, because painting 150 200 models plus tanks for a 40K army, that's intimidating.
Yes.
And even on a marine equivalent team, you're still looking at 50 60 models plus tanks and walkers and stuff, but just to get a 2,000 point base army. But for a kill team, it's 10 to 15 models tops,
Okay.
and you're in the game.
Nice.
So yeah, if you're an introductory, or if you're first getting into miniatures, it's a great game to do it with.
we typically don't talk politics on this particular episode, this particular podcast, but I have a very dicey political question for you.
Okay.
Army Painter versus Citadel. Go.
Yes.
Both.
I actually use a combination of both.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Apostate.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right? I'm a Citadel primer, Citadel contrast paints, but Army painter for base paints and varnishes. So, and washes. Their washes are amazing.
Yeah, when you said speed paint earlier, I
Yeah,
was like, speed paint. I wonder if he's talking
yeah.
generally or the actual brand.
And actually, the speed painting class that I'm doing is using what's called the slap chop method, which is a fairly new. It's a variation on a very old technique, but it uses either Citadel contrast paints or the Army Painter speed paints, which have some very unique properties to them that make them easier to work with, and the I'm actually using this as an opportunity to try out the Army Painter speed paints for myself, because I'll be teaching using Army Painter paints, and I don't know, some of their stuff is good, some of their stuff is not so good. Same can be said for Citadel, so I just pick whichever one works for me.
Just promise me that you'll channel a Bob Ross and go, "It's a happy little kill team."
Of course.
So how long does it take to do one of these models then for you? Because you've clearly been doing this for a long time. So
Right. Well, it depends. Again, like my wife's an award-winning painter, and she worked for 2 years off and on on one dragon. So
wow.
So you can go to that extreme,
Sure.
or you can be like me, and I can knock out a model in a couple of hours. And I usually paint by the squad, so maybe 5 6 hours for a squad of 10 14, because especially when you're using a method like slap chop, which is really easy. You spray paint black, dry brush gray, do a lighter dry brush of white. So you go ahead and set all of your midtones and base tones, and then you paint with contrast. And the contrast paints are very translucent, and they sink down. they've got a different viscosity than normal acrylic paints, so they don't cover what's underneath it. They just kind of accent what's underneath it. So it's almost like painting with ink, or something that's a little more translucent. So you've already got all of your shading done, you got all your highlighting done, you just slap it on and you let it dry and it's done. You could probably throw some washes on it or varnish, and that's all there is to it. So speed painting that's my thing. I'm a much more prolific painter. I paint a lot more stuff. My wife paints less stuff, but she does an infinitely better job than me.
You're not an award-winning painer, but you get the shit done, so that's good.
No, exactly. Yes, that's the motto right there.
Yeah, I have
this wall ain't gonna paint itself.
There you go. Right.
I have what I call, just like I have the wall of shame, I have my minis of shame, and so that's why I really want to get into it. So I'm excited. I was talking to Christina and Linda a couple of weeks ago, and that's how I found out about the painting that they're doing at the store. So I'm hoping to kind of learn some techniques. I've got some starter minis that I don't mind messing up on, so that I can go to the ones that I really have some nice ones that I backed to Kickstarter a while back. I've got the Night Models Harry Potter set that I want to work on, but I'm just afraid to touch those because I'm afraid to screw them up. And I also have a lot of the Critical Role minis that Steamforge put together that I'd like to try to start painting, and those are, I'm just intimidated by it, and I need to get over that, and I know I will, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, and the only way you can get past that is to actually start painting.
Yeah.
Because every mini has an ugly stage where you are ready to just chuck it in the trash and it looks like garbage. But if you can power through the ugly stage and you can get those last details painted on and that wash put on there, all of a sudden it's gonna transform right in your hands, and you'll be like, I'm brilliant. But another thing that's great for improving your self-confidence is getting an optimizer. I don't know if you noticed the little glasses that my wife was using. Mine look like I'm a Devo reject, because I've got these massive optimizer lenses with lights around the eyepiece. But every mini looks like crap when you look through that. Mm-hmm. Every one. So you're painting on it and it's like, this looks like garbage, and then you take it off and it looks like an award-winning piece of art.
That's great advice. Great advice.
I've heard that. That's you don't never look at your finished minis right up close. You put them arm's length like they would look on the table and think, all right, yeah, I can play that.
Yeah, so Karen paints minis so they look good at this range. I paint minis so they look good at this range.
See, there you go.
Well, that's awesome. I Warhammer is not a game that I see it all the time in the store. My 23-year-old daughter, when I took her into the store, they were doing that big, I guess it's like an every other month event where everybody gets together and they have the whole back room and it's just loaded out.
Oh yeah, they had that yesterday.
I thought I'd never get her out of there. I've never seen her look with such fascination towards something, and I don't know if it was just the models or the process or what. So I'm kind of curious to see if that evolves.
Yeah. I used to run those types of games down at I always forget the name of the place. It was across from Carolina Place Mall, back in the corner of that shopping center next to David's Bridal. The name of the game.
Vaguely remember that store.
Yeah, it was years
over
ago.
There by the old Steinmart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we would set up a 24-foot long table, and we'd have two armies of 20,000 points per side. So we'd have 40K of 40K, and it would take 10.5 hours to play a game. And that was with every turn structurally, like, okay, you have this much time to move, this much time to shoot. And if you don't get it in there, you lost your chance.
Wow.
But these games were amazing. People would bring out, 1.5 foot tall Titans and these custom-made war machines that were in the lore but never actually existed in as miniatures. But they would kit bash these things together. It was just it was incredible. Yeah, so I used to run those. I do not have the stamina to even play in them anymore, which is why Kills Team is much more my speed nowadays.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know James and I are going to be woefully downgraded from that. James, what's on your table this week?
Well, before we
Oh,
leave
go ahead.
Fortuna
Yeah,
here
go
for
ahead.
just a second. Yeah, I just want one final question about the JeffCon and then
Yeah.
Mythicon and all of that. How large is this? How many people usually go to these cons?
Oh yeah. So the one in Charlotte, typically you're looking between 450 to 600 people.
Okay.
So it's not a huge con,
No,
which
that's a
is
good.
part that, yeah, it's part of what makes it keep that down home feeling, you
Yeah.
know, because it's not like wall to wall people. And so, so that one, I think that they capped out at around 800 once. But yeah, so we're expecting in the 450 to 600 range this time. Uh, the one in Asheville is even smaller. It probably caps out around 300 to 400 tops. So that one's an even smaller convention, and it's the way the hotel is laid out. It spaces everybody out even further. So it's you know, you could be walking through the halls and not even know there's a con going on at all because everybody's in rooms, you know, in different areas. Cool. Yeah, but it's that one's really cozy. But yeah, so it's they're small conventions, but
Yeah,
uh,
but not
that's the
tiny.
way
I
we
mean,
like them.
I've been to conventions in out of the way places where you're getting 20, 30 people or
Yeah,
fewer. So this
sure.
sounds like a nice sort of small, comfy con. It's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a 3 day, you know, Friday night, Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday. So it will start at 3 p.m. on the Friday prior. So I guess it'd be the 9th through the 12th, or 9th or 10th through the 12th. Yeah, 10th through the 12th. So, you know, it starts at 3 p.m. for the first game slot on Friday, and it runs until usually 6 p.m. on Sunday. So Friday and Sundays are typically really slow. The one super crowded day is Saturday. That's when, like, the folks who only get one day to come, that's when they come.
Sure.
So yeah, gauge accordingly. Pre-registration for gaming is happening right now. And so if you want to get in on the action, you need to get out to the website, get your ticket purchased, and register on Ogre, and get your games lined up, because they're filling fast.
Good.
But at the same time, games are being added all the time. I think we're about at the point where we're running out of tables to put GMs on. So so that should be maxing out soon if it hasn't already. But yeah, so.
And is there because board gaming is my sort of entry for most of this.
Sure.
Is there like a board game library, or are you signing up for particular games being run by people who like know how to play Power Grid or
Right,
Fortuna?
yeah.
As it happens, there's a game Fortuna, so I thought.
Yes, there is. Yeah, I had a copy of that.
As well you should.
I have never played it, but I do have a copy of it.
You better, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so you can there. I believe there is a gaming library, but there's also the play to win section.
Right, okay.
So you'll have games, and you can basically sign them out, and then at I think it's on Saturday evening, they put the names in a hat and, you know, pull it out, and whoever wins it actually gets to keep the game that they tried out. So they have that, and then we'll also have people running games. This is typically the more complex stuff. Or, you know, folks will come out and, you know, say, I have all of the Tiny Epic games, which I do.
Right.
And so that's something that I do when I'm lazy, and I still want a GM. But so there's that. So it's a variety. You have to look at the list, but there's typically the option for a pickup game. Cool. If you want to just, you know, come through, grab one off of the play to win, and then, you know, try it out with friends, and then put it back.
Sounds awesome. Yeah. Oh, so things I've had on my table recently. Laura and I got a chance to play Patchwork. Patchwork is always a nice
Sure.
one to come back to. We have recently mostly been playing the Halloween version because they tweaked the balance on some of the polyominoes because they were just a little. I mean, after several 100,000 and more playtests, once it's out in the wild, people who have very engineering minds will send them notes and say, "Hey, this one is slightly unbalanced." So we've been playing that version, and now it's apparently appropriate to be playing the Halloween version.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
October.
Got a play of Cascadia in, which is always fun. That's the one we know really well and can go pretty quickly. And played Everdell again for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
And Laura was a bit suspicious because the last time we played it with my kid Sky, who sometimes has trouble making decisions. And so we played Everdell for like, I want to say maybe 2 hours the first time we played. And Laura had played a bad card the first time. It was like, if there are all these buildings, then you get this bonus. And she played that first off and it was just not a good experience. So she's been a little standoffish with this, but we got it, played it again, took us 45 minutes to an hour. I think it was a 1-point game. So she was much happier with the way it flowed this time. So we still have it on the table, so we're coming back to it.
Nice.
And what about you, man? What do you got there, Joe?
So we are heading out to the beach soon in a couple of weeks with my wife's family, and her cousin's children are going to join us for a period of time. So we've been kind of gearing up for that. So we learned Savannah Park, which you recommended.
What'd you think?
On the it was fun. It was enjoyable. It had that same simplicity of the Cascadia and the Calico, which we liked, and then we also just learned Wizard Kittens. So there's a story. Every Christmas, I have 2 daughters. One daughter, the theme is we give her something cat related. The other daughter, we give her something snowman related. I don't know why. This is just the way things have evolved. And so last year we gave our daughter, our oldest daughter, who's now 28, Wizard Kittens, and she's like, great, learn how to play it, then teach me and I'll take it. So we had to learn that. It was fun. It was simple. It was a trick game, and I didn't hate it. I understand that there's some expansions. Well, what I liked about it, I like a game that you can get if you have a limited amount of time, you can get it on the table quickly, play the game quickly, and then move on, and you got a game in because you got dinner to do or you got a place to be or something like that. It's a great game for something like that.
Yep.
And that was very much enjoyable. So nice to kind of have that in our wheelhouse. But those are the 2. But I think we're going to take those off the table. And my 23-year-old is liking Betrayal at House on the Hill, 3rd edition. So we're going to try to get that back out on the table today. I do have one Kickstarter note, though, for this episode. I had backed, actually on GameFound. I didn't back it on Kickstarter. I backed a game called Kingdom Come: Deliverance, the board game. And this is evidently a video game that's being made into a board game. And there's minis, and there's they're using not AI, but like your iPad is the GM, and you just play the players kind of thing. And on Friday, I got an update that said the campaign is shutting down. None of you will be charged. And they set the goal. They set the goal at like 300,000 euros, which they blew on through. But when they started scoping it out, they realized they needed more like 1.5 million euros, and they just weren't going to get there. And so it was
better for them to say that up front.
100%.
Yeah.
But it was just sort of an interesting. It wasn't newsworthy, but it was interesting because I back a lot of games on Kickstarter. I don't do a lot with GameFound. I usually use GameFound as a payment mechanism.
Right.
But anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting, that it would be useful to share on this particular episode. So we are coming up on the hour. Tuna, thank you so much for taking your morning to spend some time with us and talk about things you're passionate about. JeffCon, upcoming Mythicon, and we look forward to seeing that continue to flourish and actually attending. And I, for one, would be interested in it at some point trying to figure out how to be a GM at one of these things. I think that would be kind of fun as well.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. James, as always, it's great to see you. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. So as always, this is Joe Mahaffey, and I am not bored. I am board gaming.
And I'm James Engelhart, hoping that all your tiebreakers break your way.
Thanks again, Tuna.
All right, thank you.